Hi everyone, I'm Ms. Rachapi and I'm reading chapters 11 through 15 of Shine with You tonight. We're starting on page 37. The chapter is titled Crushed. I'm halfway up the steps when I hear a mom down at the bottom of the staircase shout, "Crush it, Ainsley!" I look over my shoulder. It's the snooty girl from the Chungli a cappella group. "Every day in every way, Mom," whirs Ainsley as she charges up the marble steps 2 at a time. She's carrying a ginormous hard-shell cello case. She almost bangs me with it when she powers by. I wonder if my mom ever did that with her cello case when she went to Chumley. I head to the front office to pick up my class schedule, which is what the Welcome to Chumley email they sent to my dad told me to do. I'm carrying a printout of that email in my hands just in case they need proof that I actually belong at the school. Inside the building, it's a whole new world. The walls are paneled with dark wood instead of cinder blocks. The ceilings are high and arched without any foamy pop-out panels. The school office reminds me of a dentist's office with padded pastel furniture and one of those gurgling indoor fountains. "Welcome, Miss Millie," said the school secretary. She handed me a sheet of paper with my class schedule printed on it and smiles at me. I'm suddenly very aware of the collar on my white shirt. It's frayed. Dad couldn't afford to buy everything new. "You're in Mrs. Zamek's homeroom. That's down the hall, room 112. Don't be late. Mrs. Zamek's doesn't tolerate tardiness." "Yes, ma'am," I say. "Thank you." On my way to Mrs. Zamek's, I pass through what has to be the Chumley Prep Hall of Fame. There are trophy cases, framed photos, and yes, plaques. I can't resist. I start scanning them until one stops me in my tracks. It's for Mom. Guess she has 2. One over in the Performing Arts Center, one here on the Wall of Honor. It's just her name and the year she graduated, etched into a brass rectangle glued to a dark slab of wood. Below her name is a quote from Maya Angelou. "I believe that every person is born with talent." What if Maya Angelou is wrong, I think? After all, she never met me. A bell rings. I hurry along to Mrs. Zamek's class. She scowls at me, and I'm not even late as I enter the room at the tail end of a clump of shuffling kids. "You must be Piper Millie," she says, glancing at an official-looking canary yellow form. "Yes, ma'am." "Antoinette Palisi was your mother?" I just nod, because Mrs. Zamek's is giving me a pretty scary look. "Well then," she says, "I imagine we should expect great things from you, Miss Millie." "Great things indeed. I was in Antoinette's class here at Chumley. She made quite a name for herself during her time here. Your mother was very gifted." I smile sheepishly. Mrs. Zamek is still giving me that look. "Please find a seat. And Miss Millie?" "Yes?" "Good luck here at Chumley." The way she says it with just a hint of sideways smirk, I get the feeling she and Mom weren't besties. Chapter 12, Scientific Possibilities. My first real class of my first day is science with Miss Oliverio. She's not scary like Mrs. Zamek. She's young and perky with dark hair and deep brown eyes, the kind you'd see in a Disney movie. When she smiles, she doesn't smirk or sneer. "Happy New Year, everybody," she says after the second bell. "So, have you guys already forgotten everything you learned last term?" "Not me," says a boy who's sitting next to me. He has thick black hair and even thicker black glasses. "My parents gave me a bunch of science books over the break, plus a Snap circus kit." "Good for you, Suraj." The kid turns to me. "I'm Suraj Shah," he whispers. "Piper Millie, I'm new." So I deduced. "How about the rest of you, Miss Oliverio?" asked the classroom. "Still think you remember everything we covered in our last unit?" Suraj sits up straight, looks around. He's ready for anything the teacher throws at him. "Well, let's find out," says Miss Oliverio. "Time for our first pop quiz of the year." There are groans and moans from everybody except Suraj. He does a little booyah arm pump. Miss Oliverio walks around the room handing out sheets of paper. "Miss Millie," she says when she comes to my table. "Yes, ma'am?" "You weren't with us last term. You can sit this one out if you'd like." "That's okay. I'm willing to give it a shot. Science was my favorite subject at my old school." "Well, I hope it'll be your favorite subject here too." Miss Oliverio places a quiz on my desk. "I like your spunk, Millie," Suraj whispers. "Thanks." I take a look at the first question. When the upthrust is equal to the weight of an object, it A, floats, B, sinks, C, moves, or D, stops. Wow, I think. I know this. I glance at the other 4 questions on the test. Double wow. I know all of them. Maybe I won't totally sink at Chumley Prep, at least not in science. Maybe I'll float, which of course is the answer to the first pop quiz question. I turn to my paper before anyone else. Miss Olivero checks my answers. Perfect, she says. Well done, Miss Millie. Thank you, I say. Suraj finishes right after me. He aces the test too. We smile and give each other knowing nods. It takes the rest of the class about 5 more minutes to answer the questions. All right, everybody, says Miss Olivero, after all the papers have been turned in and she quickly checked them. Not horrible. You remember more than I thought. And Quaim? Yes, Miss Olivero? Not only did you ace the quiz, but your bonus answer to my question number 4 was hysterical. Quaim, a kid with a sly twinkle in his eye, grins. Well, I know a quark is a subatomic particle, but if you ask me, it also sounds like the noise a subatomic duck might make. The whole class laughs, including Miss Olivero. Well done, Quaim. I try, Miss Olivero, he says. I try. All right, everybody, let's open our books because science confers power on anyone who takes the trouble to learn it. Wow, Miss Olivero is quoting Carl Sagan, one of my favorite astronomers. She's definitely a kindred spirit. At least 1 hour of my day at Chumley won't be horrible. I figure I can tough it out through the rest of the hours for Dad. Chapter 13, Mr. Van Doozy. The bell rings. Before you go, said Miss Olivero, newsflash, the science fair will be held on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Yes, says Suraj. You all need to start thinking about your exhibits. Science jokes, said Quam. Miss Olivero laughs. Ones I haven't heard? Definitely. For instance, last night I was reading a book on helium, and you couldn't put it down, said Mrs. Olivero. You can do better, Mr. Walker. See you guys tomorrow. What's your next class? Suraj asks when we hit the halls, and I look confused. I check my schedule. Honors English with Mr. Van Duzen. Suraj nods slowly. Mr. Jacques Van Duzen. He's a very interesting character. How so? You'll see. Catch you later, Piper. Suraj shows me where to go. I head up the corridor, reading every door number along the way, just to make sure I'm moving in the right direction. Finally, I find Mr. Van Duzen's room. I slip in and sit at an empty desk in the back room. Ainsley, the huffy girl from the a cappella competition, the one who bulldozes innocent bystanders with her cello case, is up near the front, chatting with her posse. I quit the a cappella group, I hear her say. How dare you, Mr. Glassbell, bail on us like that? I know, said one of her friends. You were his favorite, Ainsley, says another. His absolute favorite. Yeah, said Ainsley. And then, to make things worse, Mr. Throckmorton hired that fashion mistake from Fairview to take Mr. Glass's place without even consulting me or my parents. She shivers. No, thank you. Great, she's still trash-talking Dad. She turns around and stares at me hard. You're his daughter, aren't you? Yeah, I say. That explains your shoes. Ooh, says her girlfriend. My face is turning red. The second bell rings. Our English teacher does not appear. Where, oh where is Mr. Van Doozy? Says Ainsley sarcastically. He's such a flake. A sandy-haired boy who's hunched over and doodling in his notebook says, No, he's not. Mr. Van Duzen is the best. Oh, shut up, Timothy, says Ainsley. Nobody asked you. Why don't you do one of your stupid magic tricks and make yourself disappear? Timothy freezes for a second. Then he goes back to doodling. I start seriously missing West Side. Sure, we had our share of mean kids, but Ainsley is in a whole different league. I have a better idea, Tim, says Quaim, the joker from science class. Just make that tuna noodle casserole in the dining hall disappear. Everybody except Ainsley laughs. Tim still has his head down, but I can tell he's smiling. A few minutes later, maybe 5, after I've counted 6 different Shakespeare 3 posters on the wall, a bust and an action figure on the desk, and a hand puppet pinned to the bulletin board, a bearded man with long, shaggy hair steps into the classroom. He's about Dad's age and wears a brown corduroy jacket with over a blue work shirt. His tie is an explosion of tiny books. He's fumbling with a paper cup of coffee, a stack of folders, and a bright pink flower. My mother gave me this hibiscus for Christmas, he says, putting the potted plant in a sunny spot on his cluttered desk. What's in a name? That which we call a hibiscus by any other name would smell as sweet. He sips coffee from his cup and wipes some brown droplets out of his mustache with the sleeve of his sports coat. Must be why it's brown, too. Welcome back, my boon companions, he announces. Where's Piper Millie? I raise my hand. Welcome. Good to have you toiling in our vineyard. Thanks. Okay, pens out. New year, new assignment. Write a descriptive essay about something you did over winter break. Use your senses. Make me feel like I was there with you instead of at my mother's place in Florida. Now, go. Write. I pull out my notebook, find a pen. I'll be back in 20, Mr. Van Duzy tells us, raising his coffee cup. Need a refill. And just like that, he leaves the room. He was only teaching for 20 minutes. Everybody else starts writing, furiously. Timothy looks up from his notebooks and sees me just sitting there. Start writing, he whispers. Then he flicks his hand, miming a magic wand. Piff, piff, go. So I do. Chapter 14, Who do you want to be or not to be? Piper Millie, sneers Ainsley. She's finished her essay. Mr. Van Dusen is still out of the room. What a stupid name. Piper. I guess it suits you. You definitely look like a bird. Who cut your hair? The gardener? Her friends giggle. Mr. Van Dusen drifts back into the room, sipping his fresh coffee. Okay, merry band of bards, he says. Who is ready to share their brilliance with the class? Ainsley thrusts up her arms, volunteering to go first. All right, Ainsley, the floor is yours. She reads a couple of very vivid paragraphs about the whiter-than-white, nearly alabaster, snowy, bleached Alps in Switzerland where her family went on vacation. Just like Hannah said they would. Interesting, said Mr. Van Dusen, but sometimes we can see more if you write less. Who's next? Sebastian? Sebastian's essay is about a cruise his family took to Mexico. He does a good job of describing the various shades of green his sister turned to when she got seasick. Excellent, said Mr. Van Dusen. Then, crossing his arms and leaning against his desk, he looks at me. Miss Millie? Yes, sir? How about you go next? Well, go for it, urges Timmy. He does that magic wand piff-piff thing again. Tim's giving you superpowers, Miss Millie, jokes Mr. Van Dusen. Use them wisely, adds Quame. With great power comes great responsibility. Nervous, I stand up and read my descriptive essay about walking Mrs. Gilbert's dog with his tiny needle teeth and smushed in snout. I also wrote about the crinkle of the blue plastic bag as I scoop up the poop. When I finish, Ainsley raises her hand. Yes, says Mr. Van Dusen, you have a comment? Actually, it's more of a question. Doesn't this Mrs. Gilbert have a maid to walk her dog for her? Oh wait, I get it. Piper Millie is her maid. Her friends snicker. Mr. Van Dusen puts down his coffee, frowns, then takes 2 steps forward and braces his hands on the edges of Ainsley's desk. Is that really who you want to be, Ainsley? Excuse me, she says, recoiling like she can smell his coffee breath. Is that who you want to be? Huh? Mr. Van Dusen shakes his head. Maybe I read too much Dickens over the holidays. Scrooge, Marley, Tiny Tim. He lets go of Ainsley's desk and starts pacing back and forth at the front of the room. Got me thinking about character. Legacy. What will I be remembered for when I shuffle off this mortal coil? That ghost of Christmas yet to come always creeps me out. So guess what? I've got a new assignment for you guys. A special project. A project, whines Ainsley. Yes, Miss Braden Hammerschmidt, a project. You know what that essay English teachers always make kids write? What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, this is going to be a new spin on that tired old chestnut. A more important, nearly Dickinson question. Who do you want to be? And not when you grow up. Right here, right now. At the end of winter term, you will turn in your project. To me. I'll be the only one reading your work. So be candid, dig deep. Think hard about who it is you really want to be in this world. Mr. Van Dusen sounds like that old man at a cappella concert. I wonder if they're related. A boy raises his hand. Yes, Parker? How long does it need to be? Mr. Van Dusen grins. Just as long as you need it to be. My suggestion? Keep a journal. Jot down whatever pops into your head. No judgments, no pressure, and then, at the end of the term, tidy it all up into an elevator pitch. Huh? Parker, if you and I were on an elevator riding up from the lobby, you should be able to tell me who you want to be before we hit the 5th floor. Brevity is a soul of wit. But, Ainsley projects, we need time for real homework. We shouldn't waste it on made-up projects based on pointless Dear Diary entries. No exceptions. If you don't want to do this assignment, my esteemed colleague, Mrs. Garrett, just told me she has some openings in her English class. They meet this period too. You can transfer over. But this is honors English. Your call, Mrs. Bradenschmidt. Miss Bradenschmidt. Your call. I smile. Just a little. And I already know who I don't want to be. Ainsley Braden Hammerschmidt. Chapter 5, The Great Timdini. Thanks for your support in there, I tell Tim, the kid who was doing the piff-piff magic stuff when we wind up next to each other in the packed halls between classes. He drops his eyes and reaches into his blazer to pull out a magic wand. It pops open to make a big bouquet of fake flowers. Ta-da! Congratulations on your descriptive essay, he says. I found it very descriptive. Thanks. Would you rather have a really, really long silk scarf? He pulls that out of his ear. I laugh. Neat tricks. I'm Piper Millie. I know. That's what Mr. Van Dusen called you. Right. I was just, introducing myself. Ah, got it. He collapses his magic props and stuffs them back into his blazer pockets. So, you're Timothy or Tim? Timothy Bartlett, he says with a flourish as he dips into a hand-rolling bow. Also known as the Great Timdini. I curtsy. I'm not sure why. Maybe because Tim bowed. Mr. Van Dusen is pretty cool, I say. No, Piper. He is extremely cool. What do you think about that assignment, the Who Do You Want to Be project? I'm already done. Impossible. I know who I want to be. The Great Timdini, magician extraordinaire, because Tim is my name and the Dini is for Houdini, the 1953 movie starring Tony Curtis, not the miniseries on the History Channel. Hi, Tim, says a girl with a wild mop of curly red hair who joins us near the water fountain. She takes a quick drink. Hey, Emily, says Tim. This is Piper Millie. She's new. Cool. She shoots out her hand. Suraj told me about you. You're the science whiz, right? Kinda, I guess. I'm Emily Bleberg. So how about math? Do you like crunching numbers? Definitely, I say. You can't travel between the planets if you don't know math. You also need a rocket ship, said Quaim. He must have cruised up the hall just in time to hear my corny answer. Suraj is with him. Hey, Suraj, says Quaim. Ask me where an astronaut parks the spaceship. Suraj does. At a parking meteor, says Quaim. Thank you. I'm here all week. Because there are no holidays this week, says Tim. Too true, Timdini, says Quaim. Too true. Nice meeting you, Piper, says Emily. Ditto, says Suraj. Although we actually met earlier. We're all just standing there smiling, and I realized that Hannah might have been wrong. The kids at Chumley are just kids. But then Ainsley Braden Hammerschmidt comes along. And that's all you're reading with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're loving Shine. Bye.